What's going on, Ultra Buddies? Gardeno Games back at it again. So we're doing another meta-analysis as our world's prep continues. Huge thank you to at UCG Tournament on twitter.x.com for compiling some Japanese tournament results for us to look at. We appreciate you. They've done a tier list. We're going to hop back to this. We're going to look at some of the play rate representation and then we'll come back to this and go through deck lists as we go through the tier list again. So the meta breakdown. So thank you, Garnkun, for putting this together. They usually have this kind of setup where they show how many people got a top 4 and how many people ended up winning with certain decks. And that's a little bit tough for our English audience. So Garnkun made a nice little translation here. So Gaia Ghoul coming in hot this week with a huge amount of 47 top 4 placements. That's like 16% of the overall decks that made it. And then we have Jeed, Belial Zeton, Trigger, Dark, and then Tiga Blazer making up the top 5. Jeed we saw last week being kind of the dominant deck. And then I think Belial Zeton was kind of up there. Trigger Dark is definitely a new inclusion, and Tiga Blazer was only the Gaia Ghoul just bumping itself up into the most popular slot, I think, right? And then when we get to
before we actually jump to tournament wins, I want to call out the 10th slot here, where it's just any other deck that did not have more than 7 placements in the top 4. That's more than a third of the decks. That really shows there's a lot of variety of decks being played.
True.
People are playing Nexus decks. People are playing Mephiles decks. People are playing Chimera.
Yeah, you see the Max Blazar. I don't know what's going on there. But there's a humongous number of decks being played, like you mentioned. I've seen some. We were both poking around a little bit before this. I was seeing some Z Max Gingas. There's Max Ginga Z or Max X Gingas. It's a whole smorgasbord. It's absolutely crazy out there.
So a lot of decks, even if your favorite deck isn't in this list, there's plenty of decks people are playing, and they're very viable, very competitive.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up while we move to the tournament wins. So when we move to tournament wins, Gaia Ghoul still leads. Jeed, Belial Zeton, and Trigger Dark, the same top 4, but Max Blazer actually edges out Tiga Blazer here, which I find surprising. I've not heard really anything about Max Blazer. It might be something we have to take a peek at. And then honestly, a lot of familiar faces from the previous meta as well: Decker, Blazer, Garon, Belial Zeton, Kaiju. I think this refers to Belial Zeton decks that also splash in things like a Denethor or Mephisto, Dark Mephisto, to add a bit of extra draw or something. And then sneaking here in 10 is Tiga Nexus. Is there any interesting tidbits you noticed between the top 4 decks and the tournament wins that you saw?
I think the key things are Gaia Ghoul's on top, but it's really interesting that if you look at the top 4 decks, there's a huge bias towards Gaia Ghoul. It's almost played twice as much as everything else. But then when you actually look at the wins, it's really close and neck with a lot of these games, coming within 2 or 3 games of each other. So out of those 75 different events, only 2 more Gaia wins than Jeed wins. So I think it definitely says to some of the consistency of the decks. I mean, that's been my take on Gaia Ghoul. Really strong when you have those crazy hands. And if you have a lot of players putting in reps with Gaia Ghoul, many will come out on top. But some Jeed decks, Tiga Blazer, Tiga Max Blazer, some of these decks have a lot more consistency about them, which is really interesting to see.
Yeah, one way to look at it is 10 out of almost 50 Gaia Ghoul decks wins. So that's almost a 20% win rate in some, voodoo, hand-wavy magic, hand-wavy math type things. So if you're in a top 4 situation, you're playing Gaia Ghoul. I'd much rather be playing Jeed, which 1/3 out of them win, than Gaia Ghoul, which is 1 out of 5.
And just as a reminder, Japan typically plays best of 1 and does a top 4 or top 8 cut in most of their larger events. So once you've hit this top 4 placement category, from there, you're pretty much just trying to go 2 more games undefeated,
Right.
best of 1. So that's like the difference between your Gaia Ghoul hitting top 4 and then coming home with the Galaxy Cup win.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think for me, what I like to look at especially is the share of the decks that make it into each of these. And this kind of tells the same story with Gaia Ghoul, which is it made up 16% or 15.7% of the top 4s, but only 13.3%. So that means that there's kind of a fall off in between the top 4. You can see in the share percentage, there's a fall off there. And you would kind of expect that if things were kind of accurate, so to speak, for a deck's placement, it might keep the same percentage of top 4 as it does for winners. And so you can see that I think in Decker was pretty close, 5.7 to 5.3. Blazer Earth Garon is a perfect example. Like 4% of all the decks at top 4 were Blazer Earth Garon. 4% of all the decks that won tournaments were also Blazer Earth Garon. So that, to me, that kind of feels like, okay, it's probably in the right spot there. So that means that decks we're really kind of trying to keep an eye out on are decks that are higher in win percentage share than they were in top 4. So that's going to be decks like Jeed, which bumps up 1 percentage, Belial Zeton, which goes from 7.7 to 9.3, and Trigger Dark, which also goes to 9.3. I think, and Max Blazer,
yes, yeah, that
has a huge jump.
Really interesting.
So I'm really interested to see that. I didn't actually find any lists when I was digging earlier, so unfortunately, we won't have a list for that one today. But it might be something we have to test out in a match video upcoming.
Yep.
All right. So those are, in my opinion, are the decks to keep an eye on. Let's jump back to the tier list to see what's going on and go over some deck lists. And just to preface the tier list, it's basically, you've seen the chart. It's just based on this one. They just take the top decks, they call them S, they call them then A, and then B. They only put 2 decks in each rank. And Jeed and Gaia Ghoul this time are close enough that they decided to put them both in S. We've kind of talked about our feelings about Jeed. I think it's just a crazy good deck, right?
Yeah.
And Gaia Ghoul, while strong, it might have some consistency issues, but we have two decks to look out for each of these. So this is Jeed, just to see if there's been any kind of updates. One thing that I think we've been playing with that it seems like Japan is also starting to play with too is this Kaiju Killer Jeed here. And that one's getting plus 3,000 as a double versus Kaijus. So with the popularity of things like Zeton and Mephiles and honestly even Trigger Dark, it's going to be a 16,000 double, and you can boost it even to 19,000. It's a pretty powerful card.
Yeah.
But you are a little bit more familiar with Jeed. Like, how do you feel about this kind of list going forward?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. I think a lot of the Jeed decks come down to so in Japan, usually they run fewer scenes, and then with that, you have more space for level 1s, and it's pretty straightforward. A lot of the cards, like you might run fewer of the starter deck Jeeds if you're running more triples, and then you might end up running more of level 1s of different types. I do see some interesting things like the level 2 Jeed here in that second row on the third one. I forgot what effect that one is actually.
This one is a boost for speed type.
Yeah. So it's a power it's a 10k boost against speed. If we're seeing a lot of speeds, like those little things make a difference. But it's only a 1 of, so it's probably at this point a little bit of splash of just different cards you want to try out that may or may not make all the difference in the world. But all in all, I think G decks follow a similar formula. I think we're just seeing an increase in the Jeed Claw that gets a plus 3,000 against Kaijus.
Yeah. All right, let's check out Gaia Ghoul. This one is a pretty simple update. Decided to go for essentially what is a almost mono Gaia approach. I can't remember. There's a lot of different variations. There's people running, a small Ghoul package, maybe like 3 level 1s, 4 level 2s, 3 level 3s. There are some people running kind of the classic 4-6-4, level 1, level 2, level 3 package. But this one I thought was interesting, so I wanted to share it, which is, and it's actually leaning in the direction that I might take it, which is playing only 2 ghouls. This is the one that BP grade boosts itself when there's a bounce, and then just going maximum on the Gaia. Of course, you get Supremes at 4. You got the, I don't know, I call him like he's got like a club. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Club Gaia at 4, just your big power plays, and then it's just as much Gaias as you can to keep things consistent. One thing I really like in this one is playing these guys that can grab from the discard. That's something that like we've seen on a few of our testing matches. But yeah, any thoughts on this one, or how you might, we've been thinking about Gaia Ghoul a bit. How might you bring it?
I really like it. So they also have the other Gaia Ghoul scene that'll give a BP grade up on a bounce.
Mm-hmm.
So if you set this up right, you pretty much have a single card 17k,
Right.
which is pretty solid. It's gonna catch a lot of decks by surprise. Oh, you're only playing 1 card. I'll play a double, and no matter what the double is, very few doubles will hit 17k. So it's a good way to like close a game there. It's still 12k single if you do a bounce, so that's alone pretty solid. And then it does give you more room for your level 1 and level 2 Gaias.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm really interested to see kind of Gaia Ghoul. There's like I said, there's so many variations. We'll see kind of what ends up being the consensus build maybe in a week or 2. And we'll just have to see if it keeps putting up the same numbers. I kind of feel like this is like a little bit of bias coming in from previous times playing card games and kind of seeing how Japan operates a little bit, which is that they tend to dogpile decks. And so you sometimes end up with like Gaia Ghoul. Oh my gosh, Gaia Ghoul is winning the most tournaments. That means I have to play Gaia Ghoul. Then the more players that play Gaia Ghoul means more tournaments. And then everyone's like, oh my gosh, and the Gaia Ghoul wins more tournaments. And part of it is because, like we said, Gaia Ghoul has some crazy, like almost unbeatable hands. And if you just high roll, you win. And if enough people are playing, then enough people are going to high roll and they're going to win. And it's kind of like this weird self-fulfilling loop where Gaia Ghoul might not be as strong as it could be, especially in a format like Worlds where we need to be really, really consistent. And you can't be, I think you mentioned grinding Galaxy Cups. If you want to get 1 Galaxy Cup win and you run Gaia Ghoul, you'll probably get 1 of them eventually where you just high roll every single game. But we don't have that luxury at Worlds. So let's check out Tier A, which is Tika Blazer and Belial Zeton. We talked about Tika Blazer last week. Have you tried any more Tika Blazer in that week? Any new thoughts emerging there?
I don't think nothing really new. I think the key thing for Tika Blazer is just learning the new matchups. So it's a deck that can really capitalize on knowing where to swap, when to invest, like when to BP grade up or something, or BP down something with your Blazer Triple R.
Right.
So a lot of it will come down to knowing the new matchups. There's no new Tika Blazer card. So I don't think we'd see too much variation from last week. Just mostly a little bit of fine tuning in practice.
Yeah, makes sense. Kind of for that reason, we don't have a deck for Tika Blazer. I think you guys have seen enough Tika Blazer on the channel to know what the deck looks like. If not, you can check last week's video. Kind of another newcomer on the scene, Belial Zeton. I couldn't find a definitive deck list from Japan for this one. So I picked one that I felt like we've tested a little bit, looked pretty strong. Got a little bit of Gaia Belial in there, but mostly focus on this Zeton. The Zeton triple rare, obviously trying to go for the 20,000. And I thought this one was interesting because it just said, you know what, we're not going to do scenes at all. We're going to skip scenes. We're only going to have just other Belials. Try to hit Belial triples, it looks like. Get a nice amount for the Belial mantles. And just kind of outpower people with the Zeton. We haven't played this version in a little bit. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like the removal of scenes. I mean, there's definitely scenes out there that you can get value from. But you see here, they're no longer running the scene searcher. Instead, they have a little bit beefier level 6s to work with, which 10,000 or BP grade ups are always good. And then by having fewer scenes, whether it's the Zeton level 7 Gamblet, like Reveal 3, or it's the Kaiser Mantle Rebellial, fewer scenes mean you're more likely to hit a card when you really need it.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so that's kind of Belial Zeton. I have tried the other version, which they did split up here, the Belial Kaiju Zeton and the Belial Zeton. I feel like these potentially could be combined, at least in my opinion. They're like not. I guess they're a little bit different. So the Belial Zeton Kaijus tend not to have the level 7 Belial or level 7 Zeton. So yeah, I guess they are different, but I think that's my preference, at least in terms of build I've seen so far. Okay, and then we have in row B is Trigger Dark, and Blazar Garon. Blazar Garon, we've kind of seen it. I don't think anything's really changed in those builds. It's just a strong deck. When you hit the cards you want, you could just kind of do everything. But Trigger Dark, I think Japan is referring to it as Tori Tori. Which that's a newcomer on the scene, definitely a boost up from last week. So let's check out a deck list that we have here. This guy had a UR noise, but I think this is basically the standard build, and it's basically my build too. So very, very almost to the T. We've got 1 level 1 trigger, 10 level 2 triggers, 4 scene searchers, 4 return 2s, 2 scene destruction, 8 trigger level 3s, the old one that boosts singles and doubles, and the new Glitter Eternity. And then we're leaning on a heavy Trigger Dark package, mostly focused on the level 7s to just hit the right numbers. And then 5 scenes, 2 of the new Trigger one for plus levels, and 2 of the Demon's Rampage Trigger Dark scene to just hit those insane numbers. I think I've been testing this deck a little bit more than you, but do you have any thoughts on it so far?
I don't think I have any big thoughts. I mean, I played against you with this one a few times. I do like the mix of scenes to help you survive that turn 3, turn 4, like hump. But yeah, no, I think it's a. I would say compared to like Gaia Ghoul, this deck doesn't have as much variety to it. So if you're playing against Trigger Dark, it's a little bit easier to predict what's going to happen next. Gaia Ghoul, even with everyone dogpiling on it, there's so many variations I've seen, like flipping through the different Gaia Ghoul builds that you really don't know what you're going to get if you're playing against them. I mean, you know the triple Rs, but there's always going to be a surprise in store for there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that is it. I didn't pick up any of the max decks for us this time. It was kind of interesting. They just felt a little bit all over the place. Like I didn't really know. I didn't really see what was going on with these max decks. Like they ended up winning, but like Max Z or Max Z, it was just like the Z deck it's basically like Z Ginga, but you throw in some maxes. I don't know. It didn't like wow me, I guess. So, and then Max Blazer will be interesting to look at just because I feel like that was a little bit unexpected. I just couldn't find any decks quickly for that one. But I did pick out a few other underdog decks, so to speak, decks that I feel like I saw a few times popping up. And let's chat through those a little bit. So there's the Trigger Dark. The first one was Decker. We actually do see Decker. He's kind of peeking in there at number 7 on our total wins and number 6 in our top 4 placements. But Decker is still hanging on. I think it was a bit of a shock the first week where no one was playing Decker. But now people are like, okay, we had some fun. Decker is still good. And you can't sleep on Decker. There's still a few variations here, but it's all kind of the same. They're playing around different numbers of the level 3s and the scenes and everything like that. But this is like pretty close to what I think I'd end up running if I played Decker. Yeah, I think Decker. Just don't sleep on Decker. It's
Oh, I mean,
definitely
it's
definitely
still
good.
a solid deck. Had a lot of success this past few events, like the last Cup qualifier had a ton of Decker players,
Mhm.
and it's gotten no weaker. If anything, I mean, there's a lot of kaijus around, which can be tough matchups, but still a very solid deck, especially if people aren't running as many kaiju decks.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest thing that people are probably worried about Decker was the existence of the kaiju decks and the Zetons and maybe the Mephiles and maybe Balton coming back. And
Mhm.
it's hard for Decker, who kind of relies on 13K, 12K in the late game, to beat these just like, oh, he's just going to play 15, 15, 15, and I lose. So that's kind of like one of the weaknesses of Decker, but those decks maybe haven't panned out the way that at least I've hoped to see. That was like a big one this week that I think we didn't really mention was Mephiles is just gone. No one's really playing Mephiles this week. I did see some winner decks with it, so maybe top fours while I was looking through personally, but in the tops charts, it's basically gone. So I think not many people are still sticking to that. But some people are bringing another old classic back, which is Tiga Nexus. Any thoughts on Tiga Nexus?
I'm pretty excited. So Tiga Nexus,
Mhm.
actually, are they using this? Does
This one
seem
doesn't
like,
have any Junus Blue level 3s. I have
yeah.
seen a
Okay.
few
Oh,
that.
no. There we go. That's what I was looking for. The level 2 is actually where I was
Yeah,
thinking was
yeah.
important. So for me, Tiga Nexus was a pretty strong version of Tiga, but it lacked a little bit of the consistency you find in
Mhm.
Tiga Blazar. Though with Junus Blue, not even level 3, but really more importantly, the level 2, that recycle is very helpful to help you get the Tiga you want.
Yeah.
The trade-off here compared to Tiga Blazar is you're not as reliant on your scene to snowball, so you have that bit
Mhm.
of flexibility. But you're going to get less mileage out of your level 4, but I think you make up for it with really good scenes like Labyrinth.
Yeah, yeah. And you see this player has opted for 2 Labyrinth and 2 um, Shining ones, just to give them a little flexibility of what scene they want to end up going for when they hit that Tiga swap. But yeah, I have seen some play like 3 of the Nexus triple rare that pops a scene and playing a few Junus Blues to get a little sneaky action in there. But I think you could go either way.
Yeah.
Definitely a deck worth considering again with the addition of the muscle draw level 2, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then our last fun deck is Orb. I don't know why. I saw a lot of orbs. I don't know if you saw this when you were looking through some decks, but I felt like I just kept seeing Orb, and I was like, what is Orb doing here? I didn't get anything new. So yeah, I don't super know what's going on with this one.
I think it's still like a pretty nice deck with the Zedekin beams, like getting all
Mhm.
these powers. I think that flexibility in the on play ability helps you get extra power. And here's the kicker: a lot of their abilities are on plays. So if Gaia Ghoul is
Mhm.
bouncing you,
True.
assuming that they're not bouncing you before you get your on play effects off, you're getting extra
Yeah,
cards.
double
If you
dip.
take lead
Yeah.
against it, it gets a couple extra card draws,
Oh,
and
it
well,
feels
they
so
can
bad
always
to keep
bounce
bouncing
people.
that orb, the draw 2 orb. It's like, you don't really want to bounce that one.
Because and then if you give it a the plus 2000 from the other
Mhm.
level 3, then it becomes a
Yeah.
19k. So you kind of have to bounce it.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of
So
have to balance it. So it's
so
pretty rough.
interesting matchup.
Um, I will say one thing that kind of comes to mind as we look through the deck a little bit is that, at least in this kind of early segment of the meta, a lot of the decks, a lot of the newer decks that we see, like Trigger Dark and Gaia, are a bit slower on the setup, and or being a very aggressive deck that can and will take you out turn 3 if you give it the opportunity, is kind of like poised to take advantage of that. So this, if we still kind of see these slower decks, then I think Orb actually does have a chance to really kind of prey on them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be it. Thanks for listening to us yap about the BPO7 meta. A lot of ideas to toy with as we get closer and closer to the World Championships. And I think Max Blazer is definitely one I'm gonna have to find and see what's going on there. Because my biggest thought is like, what if it's like one guy, and he just like he's got a small group, and he found a bunch of like 4-person Galaxy Cups and just won them all. You never know.
Yeah, and I think this data doesn't go as deep as we talked about. Like you want to look at the events that have like the 20, 30, 40 plus player events. Those will require you just to play more rounds of Swiss and just have more competition for your top 8 cut. And yes, if you have a 4-person Galaxy Cup or match or whichever, then almost every deck ends up making it on the placement board. Whereas, yeah, if it's a 40-person match, you need to get through 5 games of Swiss. You're going to need to win at least 3 games to make the leaderboard.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks again. We'll see you next week for another round of the meta-analysis. And stay tuned for, we've got a lot of match videos still planned. We'll try to get a few Max Blazer ones, but we'll also probably start shifting over to doing more deck profiles and analysis that way. All right. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye.